Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to this launch of the State of the Rule of Law in Uganda, and this is our third quarterly report. My name is Gabriel Achaye, and I will be taking you through the program as it stands. Before you is a copy of the report, which I hope you all have on your tables. And also, before you is an agenda, and we have made a slight adjustment to that agenda, and your agenda shall be as follows. Item 1 will be the remarks by the acting CEO, Leah Nasasira Bita, who is here with us today. And then we shall have opening remarks by the President of the Uganda Law Society, Her Excellency Mrs. Fiona Nabasa Wall, and then we shall have the summary of issues that are in the report, a presentation that will be made by Miss Mary Nalwoga, and then we shall have a plenary session where we shall have questions. And this plenary session will be chaired. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, can we start with the first item on the agenda, and that is an opening prayer, and I will invite Rita to come and make that opening prayer. Rita, you're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Can we humble ourselves and pray? Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for bringing us together in this room, Lord, in this moment, Father God. We pray that you may be with us as we launch this Rule of Law report, that you may guide our words, that you may guide our thoughts, so Lord, that everything that is presented here today may be of you, O Lord Jesus. I pray for wisdom as we speak, O Lord. I pray that this is a fruitful event, it's a fruitful discussion, O Lord, and that by the end of it all, that fruitful recommendations come out of this, O Lord Jesus. I pray, trusting and believing in you. In the precious name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we have prayed and believed. Amen.
Thank you so much, Rita, for the opening prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us live on Facebook and those live streaming, you are welcome. Once again, as mentioned, this is our third quarterly launch of the State of Rule of Law in Uganda. And the report is quite interesting, like it will be presented later on. But before we go into the contents of the report, permit me and join me welcome the acting CEO of the Uganda Law Society, Mrs. Leah Nasasira Bita, to come and make opening remarks. You're welcome.
Thank you, Gabriel. Good morning, everyone. I take the pleasure to welcome all of you and to thank you for coming this morning. Thank you for making time to come to the launch of our Rule of Law report. It is the third for 2020, and it highlights a number of issues, a number of Rule of Law issues, breaches, and recommendations that we have compiled for the attention of various stakeholders and for their action. I would briefly welcome everyone, because that is what I'm here to do. I welcome members of the Uganda Law Society Executive Council, led by the President, Ms. Fiona Wall. Thank you for coming. I welcome the various representatives that have come from a number of institutions and CSOs. Join me to welcome representation from the UPDF, representation from UN Women, representation from Defenders, from LastNet, from PILAC, from the media, and then the Secretariat, management, and staff. Thank you all for making time. As we go through this brief launch, I hope that we shall take time to reflect on the issues that have been raised, on the rule of law breaches that have been raised, and we call upon you to use this time to help us, touch on the issues that we could have left out, and also to improve our reporting. I thank you all once again for coming, and I take the opportunity to invite the President of the Uganda Law Society, Ms. Fiona Wall, to address you. Thank you.
Just a second. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, right here and on Facebook, and good morning, Uganda Law Society out there that is watching. The Vice President of the Uganda Law Society, Ms. Diana Angwech, the Treasurer of the Uganda Law Society, Ms. Shan Mugenga, our Council Member Central, Mr. Faizo Mulalira, the Secretariat members present, led by the CEO, Ms. Leah Bitter, Brigadier General Sinje, our Chief Legal Services of the UPDF, who is here on behalf of the Chief of Defense Forces, General Mhozi, Ms. Tabitha Natua of African Defenders, Ms. Nakawombe Olivia, LASPNet. We have Ms. Tanseriko Arthur, NetPil. We have various representatives, and we have our representatives from UN Women and the other organizations as we go forward. I'd like to recognize you and welcome you this morning. I'd also like to recognize members of the Fourth Estate present. As our CEO has stated, this is the third of this year. This is the third quarterly rule of law report for this year. As the Uganda Law Society, we are guided by a strategic plan, 2017 to 2021, under Strategic Objective 3, which is to promote the rule of law and human rights protection. We found it wise in 2017 to launch these rule of law reports as a form of keeping everybody in the country aware and present to the realities of the rule of law and human rights in our country. But we also found it a good way to get together and present this report to key stakeholders in the justice, law and order sector, but also all the human rights actors like the civil society organizations and our development partners. In the last few years, our guests, I'm very proud to report that we've been able to get some tangible results. For instance, we had a rule of law report that was centered around health and the law, and it resulted into public interest litigation with our partners, SEHAD, and they've done very well in that area. We also did one on the independence of the judiciary that resulted in a litigation to ensure that the Judiciary of the Administration Bill was passed. So I'm really glad past President Gimara led on that, and this is why now we have the administration bill. We have had various initiatives that have been born out of us presenting these reports. So today, I want to quote somebody, President Ronald Reagan. He stated that when we speak of peace, we should not mean just the absence of war. True peace rests on pillars of individual freedom, human rights, national self-determination, and respect for the rule of law. Today, Uganda Law Society is trying to, in taking cognizance of the course of events that have prevailed over the last 3 months in the country, let alone these past few weeks, we've found it pertinent to act on our mandate to protect and assist the public in all matters incidental to the law. This edition of the report highlights the issues affecting the rule of law and offers recommendations that seek to improve the observance of the rule of law among stakeholders in the country. This quarter that we're talking about that ended in September, right, Mary? Yes. So I'm sorry that it's been late. We usually do it on time, just immediately after the quarter. But this has been delayed by so many things, including the elections of the Uganda Law Society, the East African Law Society. So it might be a little late, but it will cover, it's covering children's rights. It's covering something about the balance of power, the checks and balances. It's also talking about the independence of the judiciary. We saw a lot of executive interference in the way that the judiciary is working in this particular quarter, and it concerned us, and we've highlighted that in the report. This quarter has also been characterized by increased violation of rights of children. As I said, the 48-hour rule being violated. We've also had media rights and freedoms being violated, and it's ironic that this was just before the Media Freedom Day. We also saw outlandish law enforcement brutality as a result of the foregoing riots, which are highlighted in this report. It is also no myth to the citizens and country that the same continues to prevail, yet there are strict rules and codes of conduct that govern our institutional structures. It's on this premise that the increased violations reveal that we, the various justice stakeholders, still have a lot of work to do in order to eliminate this impunity and lawlessness. The purpose of this report is not to add to the ones already on the shelf, but to make a statement and inspire a commitment from all the justice actors that besides bearing witnesses to the injustices that prevail, we pledge our support and aid to all that have suffered injustices at the hands of others. I'd like to state here that the Uganda Law Society is currently celebrating our Pro Bono Week. The whole week we're going to be providing pro bono services. It will culminate in the Pro Bono Day, and we would like to welcome everybody that has a grievance, because we not only deal with those that are totally indigent, but there's the issue of vulnerability. So come to us. We have a toll-free line, 0800 100 150. As the Uganda Law Society, we have over 2,700 advocates that are at our disposal to provide pro bono services. We're going to be doing this in all the 22 countries, in 22 districts where we are operating. And we're also going to be very present on Pro Bono Day itself in Kampala. We'll be at the LDC premises and at Mengo Court. I'd like to thank the Rule of Law Advisory Panel and Cluster and the Rule of Law Department. Especially, we'd also like to thank Professor Sempebwa for leading this team. They're not here, but they're online. For their immense efforts in putting together this quarterly report, despite the turbulent times that we've been in. Thank you for this tremendous job done in compiling the report. And they've done this very consistently for a very long time. Let's give them another hand clap. As I conclude, Edward Snowden rightly stated that the rule of law does not mean that the police are in charge, but that we shall all answer to the same laws. I believe that this is something we can take with us today in ensuring that we see a Uganda governed by the rule of law. I'd like to applaud our representative from UPDF for joining us today. This shows that the UPDF in this time actually values this conversation, and we will wait to hear from you and the Ugandan people would like to hear what you have in mind going forward with what we've been saying. Thank you so much for coming, and have a very fruitful deliberation.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause for the President. Yes, she has given us her opening remarks, but also she has given you an insight of what you should expect in the report. And without further ado now, permit me invite Miss Mary Nalwoga, our Rule of Law Officer at the Program Officer at the Uganda Law Society, to come and give us a summary of issues in the report that the President had already highlighted, and then we shall be heading off for a plenary. Mary, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to this launch. My name is Mary Naroga, the Rule of Law Officer for the Uganda Law Society, and I'm here to give the highlights of the report. The report is for the period of July to September, as the President had earlier commented and mentioned that it has been overdue, but at least it has been presented today. It has issues that were highlighted between that period, and these include, we have issues on checks and balances, where we had the doctrine of separation of powers. And the report, it quoted some cases where the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary, which is guaranteed under Article 126 of the 1995 Constitution, was infringed on by the executive. Giving an example of the Endeavour Church, the court made an order, which was the court made an order cancelling the title which belonged to the church. However, we saw the executive also promising to rebuild the same church at the same time. So this was undermining the powers of the judiciary, yet this was supposed to be protected under the Constitution. And then we also saw a case where court wanted to give bail to the Minister of Labour, Honorable Mwesigwa Rukutana, despite it wanted to give bail, but the executive came and, interfered with the duties of the judiciary and denied court to give bail to the honorable. So the report highlighted that issue. Then we also saw, still on the issues of the doctrine of separation of powers, regarding POMA, which is the Public Order Management Act of 2013, the court had earlier made a ruling in the case of Human Rights Network Uganda and others versus Attorney General, which was regarding Section 8 of the Public Order Management Act, declaring Section 8 unconstitutional, the powers of Uganda Police to prohibit and disperse political gatherings were withdrawn by the court. However, despite the declaring Section 8 unconstitutional by the court, we have continued to see police dispersing, protesting. We have seen people, police still dispersing these lawful congregation, and such cases were highlighted on July 6, 2020. The Uganda police fired live bullets and tear gas at traders and taxi drivers who were protesting against loss of lives during lockdown. We also saw a case in where 6 traders in Kampala were arrested by the Uganda police for holding demonstration concerning the extended closure of arcades and so on. However, the Uganda Law Society recommends that clear guidelines should be set out in the Constitution to be enforced to limit the executive from interfering with the duties of the judiciary. Also, there was also another recommendation which states that the Uganda police should be sensitized on human rights and provisions in POMA. The report also highlights another issue regarding due process and climate of legality. This is protected under Objective 3 of the 1995 Constitution, which mandates the state to provide peaceful, secure, and stable political environment. Also, another objective also provides for social justice and economic development and obliges the state to endeavor to fulfill the fundamental rights of all Ugandans to social justice and economic development. However, we still saw there was due process and climate of legality was not observed under the electoral irregularities. Specifically, during the NRM primaries, we saw a lot of chaos. During that time, irregularities were witnessed around the country, and there was a lot of disenfranchising people from voting. And the Uganda Law Society still recommends that the Electoral Commission of Uganda and the authorities of the NRM Central Executive Committee should expeditiously investigate the allegations of human rights violation and the election irregularities that occurred to avoid future reoccurrence. Then, still under due process and climate of legality, the report highlights a disconnect between security sensitization. And we should note that our constitution is basically in English. It's not in any other language. So it's not easy for the public out there to know what is included in the constitution. So we recommend that this should be done so that the constitution is interpreted in other languages as soon as possible. The report also highlights human rights violations regarding protection of freedom of expression, movement and assembly and association. We saw cases of musicians, comedians, journalists arrested for content touching on politicians and people in government. So during this period, freedom of expression in the country was constantly stifled as there were constant arrests and interrogations of media practitioners and artists for allegedly producing content which was against the government. So the Uganda Law Society recommended that while enforcing the duty of setting standards, monitoring and enforcing compliance of what should be done, of what should be communicated on radios and televisions, including social media, the Uganda Communications Commission, the government should adhere to the right of freedom and speech and association. Also, regarding human rights abuse, we saw cases of infringement of children's rights, especially during lockdown. These cases include increased cases of defilement cases in the country. We had forced marriages because most girls were not going to school. And the districts which were highlighted, we had Chegwegwa, Kasese, Kitugum, Ngora, and Liantonde. during lockdown, most girls were forced into marriages because also the parents were benefiting from it. So we also saw child adoption scheme in the judiciary, and some judicial officers were banned from going to the United States of America due to such schemes. So the Uganda Law Society recommends that all laws protecting the rights of children in Uganda should be operationalized to create a conducive environment that protects the physical, mental, social, and psychological development of a child. I'm not reading all the recommendations, but they are all stated in the report, which shall also be shared with you. Then we also had issues of the right to life, which is also provided for under Article 4 of the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights, that declares that every person is inviolable by virtue of the right to life and integrity. Also, Article 6 provides for the same in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is also inculcated in the 1995 Constitution of Uganda. So, such cases were seen where a lady, Violet Kakai, a nurse at International Hospital, Kampala, was hacked to death by her husband, Ewan Simon Shimani, and so on. So the Uganda Law Society recommends that the government as well as civil society organizations should intensify awareness on protection of the right to right with the assistance of media, computers, and mobile phones to reduce the increasing wave of murders by citizens. However, this should be noted that these cases are still continuing. So there's a lot to do out there, and all of us here in this room. Also, the report highlights cases of transparency and accountability. We should note that in the Uganda National Objective of the 1995 Constitution, it stipulates that all lawful measures shall be taken to expose, combat, and eradicate corruption and abuse or misuse of power by those holding political and other public offices. However, we still continue to see cases of embezzlement in our country. Giving an example of the Teachers Saving and Credit Organization Society, that case has been in the media for long, where funds were given to teachers by His Excellency to acquire loans to create side income. However, this money did not reach to the beneficiaries. This case was also highlighted. So the Uganda Law Society recommends, among others, that thorough and widespread investigation ought to be conducted to address irregularities of transparency and accountability in government agencies. Also, the Finance Intelligence Authority should work hand in hand with the Office of the Inspector General of Government in checking accounts and dealings of the officials involved in handling finances received by an institution. We should note that some of these institutions, the public are not aware that they actually exist. So there is need for increased awareness of such, so that in case of any of these cases that concern transparency and accountability, we should be able to run and report such cases to such institutions like the Financial Intelligence Authority. In conclusion, the Uganda Law Society commends the Ministry of Health for the positive steps and endeavors to ensure the right to health is maintained. This case, particularly during this quarter, the health workers who are absent from duty at Kawempe National Referral Hospital, the Ministry of Health came in and saw such a case, and they told them to put down their tools because they were absent from hospitals. So that was a step forward to show that there was positive strides in promoting good health and protecting the right to health in the country. In addition, we should note that our Chief Justice, Bart Katurebe, retired on June 21st, 2020. So we applaud the government for appointing immediately the Chief Justice Alfonso Windolo to take over that position, and also his deputy, Justice Richard Butera. We also applaud the appointment of the Inspector General of Government, Justice Lydia Mugambe, after Justice Irene Mulyagonja was appointed to the Court of Appeal in October 2019. So these were the positive strides that were noted during that period. However, we should still note that there is still a lot to be desired regarding the protection and promoting human rights by all organs, agencies, including security agencies and all persons in Uganda. Specifically, during this period in review, cases of infringement of the right to freedom of expression, assembly, as well as cases of children's rights were highlighted. So we should note that these should continually be protected, especially the freedom of expression and assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the things that were highlighted in the report. I hereby welcome the plenary regarding any questions regarding the report.
Wow, a round of applause for Miss Mary Nawoga. She has done a very great job summarizing this report, and she has gone in depth. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to recognize Amanda Rachel from the European Union. Please stand up for recognition. Thank you for coming. Thank you for representing the European Union. And also, I would like to recognize Martha Agaba from the UN Women. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate you, and thank you for joining this discussion. Also, I would like to thank JELOS for sponsoring this very beautiful, the publication of this beautiful report. Thank you so much, JELOS, for all the support that you give us. We really, 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 really appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going into the plenary. You have heard the contents of the report and the recommendations, and I know very many of you are itching to make a contribution to that. For the online audience, you will send in your comments via Facebook, your comments and questions via Facebook. We shall be reading them out here and responding to the same. Allow me to invite our session chair for the plenary, Ms. Tabitha Netua, who is a manager at African Defenders, Pan-African Human Rights Defenders Network. A round of applause as she comes. You're welcome, madam.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. President of the Uganda Law Society, Fiona Wong, a representation from the UPDF, Brigadier General Businje, representatives from different organizations that have been mentioned earlier, the UN, EU delegation, NETPIL, LASPNET, council members of the ULS, members present at this very important launch. Those online, welcome. So now we start the plenary session. We've had the findings of the report. We've heard about the presentation, which detailed the checks and balances, the due process and climate of legality, human rights issues, transparency and accountability, with very strong recommendations to both state and non-state actors, and ourselves as well about practical activities, implementation strategies that we can implement to make sure that the rule of law is respected in Uganda. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm keen to hear your views and opinions about the findings of the report and how, in a practical sense, we can move this forward. Yes, thank you.
I will move the microphone.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. I know, of course, we did this report, but as Mary was reporting, I remembered one thing that's very crucial to human rights in this country, and that's the Human Rights Commission. So the fact that we do not have a chairman, I think, is a big issue, especially in this environment and at this time. And I also thought we should celebrate the passing of the Judiciary Administration Bill, because I think it was passed in that quarter.
Thank you very much. Those are very key issues. Chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Yes, Mr. Ansereko.
Thank you so much. One, I congratulate councils, secretariat, the rule of law cluster and committee, as well as ULS on this third report. It gives us encouragement when we can at least document what it is that is happening in our country. I have only two comments to make. One on the question of due process and climate of legality. I've had keen interest in every report that has been published on the ULS, by the ULS. And it saddens when, for every report that we receive from the ULS, we are still talking about the need for due process and legality in whatever we do. We are all alive to the extrajudicial killings that have just taken place, but also the mob justice that comes from the public. Whereas we may classify some victims as innocent, until anybody is proven guilty, they are still innocent. And so I would still want to encourage ULS to follow up on every victim of an extrajudicial killing, as well as the mob justices. The number of people who are suffering from mental health challenges that have been victims to mob justice. My second comment is on issues of accountability. We definitely applaud the executive on appointment of the Chief Justice, and timely appointment at that. The President has made mention of the gap or lacuna created in the absence of a chairperson, Uganda Human Rights Commission. In the times we are, we cannot as a country operate and say we respect rule of law without institutions being fully enabled to carry out their mandate. I also make a mention on the need for a Uganda Communications Tribunal. We've had the UCC, the Communications Act, for the last 6 years, and the Judicial Service Commission is mandated to establish a communications tribunal. It is sad that 6 years down the road, we don't have that tribunal in place, and we are in a dispensation where media has become the center of all political activity. How I would love it in the next report to return here, and we applaud executive for appointment of the chairperson, Uganda Human Rights Commission, and establishment of that communications tribunal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ansereko. I'll request that for interventions, please mention your names and the institutions you're coming from. Thank you.
Okay, so we have some questions from our online audience, and we have Mr. Drake Mboa, who says the report has not touched on the recent massacre that happened in Kampala 2 weeks ago. And he's wondering what we are saying about that. Ms. Rita Aligo says that the report is covering the months from July to September, and she says it details most of the happenings in the country. Yes, those are the few questions that and comments we have online. Maybe back to you. I'll be reading more. There's still some more.
Thank you very much. I'll start off with Mr. Anseroko's intervention.
There is a question here. Yes. A comment.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Brigadier General Godard Usinje. I'm the Chief of Legal Services in the Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs and the UPDF. I'm here representing the Chief of Defense Forces, General David Muhoozi. Both of us are lawyers and advocates, and we head key departments in the Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs. Personally, I'm an emeritus member of the CRE, of the Uganda Law Society, and I do participate in the trainings of the Uganda Law Society when I'm invited. I'm an associate professor of law, and I've taught many lawyers in this country. One highlight of the report, which I think I should comment on, is on the disconnect between the security forces and the citizens. I see it as one of the key aspects that I should comment on. One, we are all Ugandans, and I think as Ugandans, we don't have a dividing line between the security forces and the citizens. So we are one country, one people. Now, being in security forces is an engagement which is constitutional. I think the most important aspect of the Constitution is Article 17, which talks about the rights and obligations of citizens of the country. So each one of us has to be aware of his or her role under the Constitution. Of course, when we talk about the disconnect in the report, there is an insinuation that there are security forces and then there are citizens on the other side. But I think that to me is not correct, and maybe it was put in the report for purpose of discussion so that we see what lies ahead for Ugandans. I can conveniently speak on behalf of the UPDF, which is one arm of the security forces in this country. Our constitutional mandate is very clear. We have to protect the integrity of the state. And under the Constitution, yes, and under the UPDF Act, we are also obliged, again in line with Article 17 of the Constitution, to work under civil authority to ensure that there is peace and security in the country. And I think all of us, as members of the Royal Society and the Ugandans, celebrate the security environment that we are living in, much as there are hiccups here and there. In one of the fora I attended, somebody was insinuating that Uganda is not a strong state. I think Uganda is a strong state. We have not degenerated into anarchy, at least for the NRM period, which I have wholeheartedly served since I joined the forces in 1985. There is no breakdown in the rule of law. We have already uploaded the appointment of the Chief of Justice immediately after the retirement of the other, the appointment of my classmate, the IGG now, and many others. Recently, Fiona was appointed the President of Uganda also elected before the riots, and she's doing a good job. My good friend and my former student, Bernard Owondo, is now the President of East African Law Society. And I see that we are working hand in hand as the security forces and the citizens. The UPDF engages the citizens through a number of ways. I'll briefly highlight them. And I'm not having a speech to read on behalf of my boss, so I'll speak from my own few tips in regard to the human rights aspects, basically. Now, when you look at the defense forces, we have departments that link us to the citizens directly. We have the army spokesperson by the names of Brigadier Flavian Biakwaso. Currently, the office is open. It's an open place. People go in if they have issues. We have the Chieftains of Legal Services. We advise the ministry, UPDF, on all legal issues concerning the country. We also handle international relations, and we are involved both in internal and national and international relations. We have the Civil Military Relations Office, which also bridges the citizens with the military in case there are issues, and issues will be there. As members of families, we know that issues are there in families. So if issues are there, they have to be ironed out. We have a human rights department, which is headed by one of my staff, a lawyer. And there are many others. We also have the Inspector General of the Army, who is the Deputy Chief of Defense Forces. And we have the Directorate of Inspectorate. So we have checks and mechanisms and balances within the UPDF. And all that is capped by the training programs that we undergo. A trained soldier is as good as a toothless dog when it comes to the public. I will just share one experience. He talked about psychological recovery. I'm trying to recover from the effects of the recent riot. I was returning home. I stay in Nsanji, reaching Chengera, where people know me very well, in a military car. They stoned me 3 times. I've just repaired my car. I had guns in the car. We were 3 armed people with so many rounds of bullets, I can tell you. But we didn't fire any bullet. I told my driver, when they say stop, you stop. I told my bodyguard, if they say this, do it. We are Ugandans. If they say sing this, sing like them. Join them. They are part of us. But don't put out a bullet without my command. We passed through so many roadblocks they would lay. The last one was at Budo. A young man saw my car coming and threw a log in front. I said, soldier, get out, don't fire, pick the log from the gate so that people can pass. And we passed. All that is because of the training that we have undergone. You know, we have training institutions, several, but as lawyers, we have our internal training programs under the guidance of the Chief of Defense Forces. By then he was Commandant Forces. We started the Legal Training Center. It is based in Jinja. It is actually an international institute for training lawyers and diplomats. We partner with the International Institute of Humanitarian Law in San Remo, Italy, where I'm a visiting professor. And they conduct courses for us in Jinja. I also conduct courses for them in Italy. And we also have an African Military Law Forum, where I'm the vice president for East African region. We interact, we train, we share experiences with other militaries in the whole world. And I've seen that UPDF has a lot to give out to the international community in terms of observance of human rights. Yes, there will be issues, and I think I will not make a long speech on that, but I want us to be honest as lawyers. Let's stick to our ethics, and I always guard the institution of the lawyers when we are in our meetings. Lawyers have a mandate. Advocates in particular have a mandate, and they must play that mandate. When I receive writs of habeas corpus, I advise that this must be complied with, and we comply. We are also lucky that the Chief of Defense Forces, because he is normally the one served, will say CLS, that is the abbreviation for Chief of Defense Services, ensure this is complied with. And we do that. When there are issues of breach of the law and soldiers are involved, one, not very long ago, we used to have the field court martial, which is now in abeyance. I think it will not come back again. It is still in the act. We are amending the act very soon. But we still have field courts. You commit an offense outside the barracks, we try you where the offense was committed. And these are several, and you must have heard about a number of them. So that we bring the public, whom we serve, who we belong to, in line with, to understand what we do. We don't want to do things in the barracks and somebody say, what happened in that regard? Our military courts are open courts. The General Court Marshals and the Unity Disciplinary Committee, the open courts. And most of the defense counsel are civilians. We provide defense counsel for anyone who does not have a private lawyer or advocate. But we encourage members of the society to handle those cases pro bono where possible, because some of the people in the dock don't have the capacity to engage lawyers. And overall, I say that we are transparent. The Commander-in-Chief's guidance that we must be transparent, we must be pro-people. You know that now, the last point is that we are involved in production with the civilians, societies. The Operation Wealth Creation program is on the ground. Officers, retired officers, the reserve members are in the field. And I think the last one is that we're interested in two things as the defense forces. One, that Ugandans must remain alive from all disasters, including COVID-19. And our doctors are up in arms. You know, some of them are the ones leading the research in the country on virus and COVID research tests. We want us to remain free from HIV/AIDS, because I know personally what it has done to our forces. We lost some of the most, what would be celebrated commanders due to that virus. We also want to remain peaceful so that we don't see bloodshed coming from the guns which we have to protect the citizens of the country. And I think, if I may not forget anything, let's work hand in hand. The Chieftains of Legal Services is so big in the UPDF. It has branches. We have the Civil Department, which is the biggest, because we handle with the Attorney General. We work under the Attorney General. We have a new department, the Land Division. You'll see quite often your colleagues in protecting the interests of the soldiers in regard to land matters. We have the Legal Aid Clinic. It also helps. We have family issues. We have, of course, the Criminal Department. And of course, with resource constraints, we are unable to do each and everything perfectly. But I think where we fault, where we don't condemn, but come to us, and through your president, we share and see how we can improve our relationship between the security forces, and in particular the UPDF, which I represent here, and the citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brigadier General Businje, for that very extensive intervention on behalf of the UPDF, giving details of what the UPDF is engaging in a practical sense going forward. Any other interventions before responses are given to the issues raised and the questions? I'd like to read some that have come in online from Sylvia Nambiru. She says, as mentioned by Mr. Ansereko Arthur, who is the coordinator NetPIL and chairperson LASPNet, let this gathering go on record to condemn the extrajudicial killings that happened on 18th and 19th of November and the missing substantive chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. The lacuna of not having a substantive chair is glaring and needs immediate attention by the appointing authority. Another comment is from Oyugi Onono Quirinas. Apologies for mispronouncing your name. Thanks, ULS new team. Can the team investigate problems lawyers are facing in state briefs, such as deliberate underpayments and lack of transparency on amount meant for lawyers on either plea bargain or full trial?
Also, we have comments coming in from Mr. Dennis Odota from the Democratic Governance Facility, DGF. He says, thank you, ULS, for this report. The involvement of the officers of court in the ULS adoption scandal is a real sore in the administration of justice. Has there been a formal inquiry by the government to get to the root of the issue with the view bringing those implicated to account? That's Dennis Odota from the Democratic Governance Facility. Thank you so much. Hassan Shaya and Lillian Athire, who thank the ULS leadership for organizing this. Keep sending your comments. We shall continue to comment and respond to them. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Uganda Law Society for this report. Thank you for giving us the insights of the violations that are going on in the country. Going through the report, I noticed, yes, they talked about infringement of children's rights, and they've mentioned very many violations. Of course, we all know as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen a very high increase in some of these cases, in these violations. We've seen impunity, and yes, much as we put recommendations forward, I'd just like to bring to attention and what I really thought I would like to see more in the report, or probably in the next one, is issues on violence against women and girls. Yes, they talk about infringement of children's rights, but we all know cases of violence against women and girls are on the increase. Like Mary clearly stated, Kakai, who was murdered, I think it was also as a result of violence. So I just want to bring it to our attention that yes, as the cases are increasing, how are we as Uganda Law Society and other actors, how are we bringing on other actors on board? For instance, the Ministry of Gender and Labour and Social Development, Ministry of Finance that does the budgeting. We know most of these women are trapped in their homes. And as a result of COVID, yes, we're having this increase of cases, and sometimes they do not have where to go. So the need for shelters, where can they get a safe place to stay, as probably they're seeking legal attention, because most of them are in these homes and staying with perpetrators who continue to cause all these multiple forms of violence. And also just to reckon that as we celebrate, we're in the era of celebrating the 16 days of activism, and maybe to re-echo some of these things, violence against women and girls, violence against children, and the impunity natures of the perpetrators, what is being done. Yes, we have good laws, but how are we engaging these actors to implement these laws to ensure that women are getting getting access to justice and they're being protected? Thank you.
Thank you very much, the representative from the UN Women, who has raised a critical issue around violence against women. There have been several reports during the COVID-19 lockdown, and more recently there's been increased violence, domestic violence, and in this particular report it focuses mainly on children's rights, but it's critical that this extends to violence against women. Thank you. Any other comments, questions online? Our online audience?
Yes, there are quite a couple coming in, but let's respond to the ones that we have, then we shall get some more rounds.
Thank you very much. I'll give you a little bit of background of the work that the organization I'm representing at this very important launch is Defend Defenders and African Defenders. It's an organization engaged in promoting the rights of human rights defenders, including journalists. And the reason that I'm talking about the background is because some of the questions raised talk about critical human rights issues at national level. Our organization works at Africa level, as well as the Eastern Horn of Africa sub-region. And these issues that we are seeing reported in this report and from the plenary are issues that are key at a regional level. Many countries are grappling with many issues, and human rights defenders are raising them at national level. The freedom of expression, association, and assembly is a key aspect of a democratic process that should be observed. The right of the fourth estate to report in a free and fair manner without their rights violations, I think it's something that as a country we should really pay very close attention to. And also what had been mentioned earlier, holding to account perpetrators of violations is something that as a country we should really, really focus extensively on. There are several questions raised about the report, and I would like to invite the President of the Uganda Law Society, Fiona Wall, to respond to several of those questions, including talking about the questions around the recent violations in Kampala, the massacres on 18th and 19th of November. There were questions around the adoption scandal, the lawyers' issues, children's rights, women's rights, as well as the appointment of the chair of the Uganda Human Rights Commission and other substantive offices that is pending. Thank you.
Let's give Tabitha a big hand clap. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Before I proceed, I don't know whether my council members would like to say something. Faisal, our council member central, you cannot go away without saying something. Your members will skin you alive.
Thank you, Your Excellence. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Your Excellence. Today's gathering reflects our purpose in life and our calling to our nation, a nation that we make better for those of us who are here, the generation that will come after us, just as we've inherited it from those that came before us. We can't thank enough the state actors and non-state actors. However, we do call upon all persons and all manner of persons, irrespective of your status in society, to reflect and follow the law to the letter. The law has been designed to create a safe place for all of us. My teacher, Dr. Goddard Businje, made an elaborate presentation on the receptive nature of the Uganda People's Defense Forces. We would like to see Uganda People's Defense Forces walking the talk. I salute you for the extreme resilience you exhibited during the time of the attack. But not so many of your men in the uniform are doing that. On my part, as a researcher in the area of intellectual property, particularly copyright, I have seen a lot of violations of copyright as copyright actors and innovators, as highlighted in the report, where we have sides of actors and stage players taking part in the political dispensation. Particularly, the group highlights a group of drama group called Bizonto. Yes. And we've also seen a certain lady who has taken to vulgarity through the use of her social media page. So if we are to balance and creating, because we have so many of our children who are learning from social media and picking ways of life and ways of living, and sometimes ways of expression and communicating. So can we all social media users make social media a safe place or platform for communication, particularly relating to morals, manners, and the rule of law in this country? So with those few remarks, Madam President, I'm cognizant and thankful to the Secretariat and the team for the write-up and the editorial board. I know Ugandans, you're waiting to see what is our take on the 18th and 19th massacres. The period under review in this report does not cover that, but as you know from our previous communications, we've committed to, through our strategic litigation committee, to follow those matters to the letter. The pro bono week is on. Come to us. Those are the immediate issues we can't wait to handle.
Now you see why we had to hear from him. Our treasurer, Shan, just say something to the people.
Good morning. I thank you all for coming and attending. It's really nice to have different, to have different actors come together so that we can find solutions. We know that Ugandans are not really happy about what has happened. People died, families lost their loved ones, people lost their businesses. But I think it's time that we all reflect inward. What is our contribution? How can we communicate our frustration without necessarily endangering people and their property? The Law Society is committed. We have committed to come and open our doors to be able to help everybody solve their grievances and find a way forward. We thank you, Brigadier General Businje, for coming. It's really encouraging to see that UPDF is committed to working and securing the state. Mine is a prayer to the police and to the general public that we cannot pick and choose what is suitable for one and not the other. If we want security, we must recognize security. If we want law and order, we must give law and order. We have different people who have come here today, and they're all speaking about human rights. They are all encouraging everybody to get to know their human rights. Maybe we should use our social media platforms to promote the Constitution, to make it a learning platform, so that everybody is aware what is to be done and what is not to be done. For our leaders, we ask that you continue to bring messages of peace in the way governance is carried out from top to bottom and also from bottom to top. I can only pray that as we enter into election season, that we as Ugandans remember that we are one people, different colors, but one people. My President, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our council members.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for giving me this opportunity again. I think as we are in an election mood, I think it would be unfair for us lawyers to keep quiet and wait for the cases that we are going to handle. We say maybe we should be expecting so many cases and we get jobs and something like that. One of the mandates I think which is incumbent upon us is to educate first ourselves. We know the constitutional obligations, we must register and vote, and also educate the masses on their constitutional obligation to vote. Because some of the issues that we are facing as a country is because most of the Ugandans, you see we are 44 or plus million people, and I don't think that the 20 plus are below the voting age. But the voters register, I think, reflects 17 point something million. Why do we have that laxity in voting? Why in fulfilling our civil rights? We need to engage in this period. Those who, I don't know what the Electoral Commission is doing about those who have not yet registered, but I'm sure they are updating the register. We have programs through all the forms of media to sensitize the public. Those who are of age, they register and vote. Because regrets come on board. If you say, I wish I had voted, this one should not have come on board. So I think it is very important. For me, I am a registered voter. I've voted all through. And I encourage my family members to vote. Because without voting, we can't solve issues. If you vote, then you'll not regret. Because you have exercised your mandate. Let's do that. Then the last one, I think, as the Law Society and the UPDF. For us, we have all the qualities that are also in the mainstream legal fraternity outside. We engage in research and publications as well. We have partners who help us in publishing and writing. And I think what I've observed is that there are very few lawyers who have written about the experiences in private practice. And that knowledge disappears with the person leaving the practice. I think we would be doing ourselves a good service if we encourage ourselves to go into that. We write what we practice so that we learn from that. It becomes lessons learned. If you go to the South African southern region, every lawyer I think has published. Very soon you will be senior counsel, but you may find that there are very many senior counsel who have not published what they have written and gone through as experience. So I wanted to challenge ourselves so that we do that, so that the masses know what we are doing. And how do we go the outreach programs? Again, we need, I know it could be a resource constraint, but we can partner. For example, if you talk about Pro Bono Week, engage all the stakeholders. I'm sure my Chief of Defense Forces would also spare some contribution, send some of us to partner with you so that we have a private-public partnership in those engagements. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goddard. Just before, somebody from DGF, I think, asked about the current quarter. Just to correct, we were reporting about the previous quarter, and our current quarter's report is coming out soon. But we cannot leave this place without knowing what the UPDF is doing about the officers that we saw shooting live rounds into the public. Is there any disciplinary action that's being taken? Is there, what is the UPDF doing about this? And it's very good that you outlined the systems and the structures that you have within. But I think that the public would like to hear that. It's very unfortunate that the police are not here. We invited them. So it means a lot that you're here. So please speak to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. One, my Commander-in-Chief has spoken publicly about the actions that are going to be taken on those who violated the law. I can't repeat in better words than he stated himself in the public, to the public. But for us as legal services, plus the investigative branch of the UPDF, we are working with the police and other agencies, the public, to identify those members of the UPDF who went beyond the red line. That's what I can say now. I don't have the exact report of what has happened because this was an internal security operation led by the police. So we shall get the report and we shall pick our own. And please bear with us. Sometimes we are condemned for being harsh to ourselves. Yeah, we are trained. We know where we're supposed to stop. So the actions will be taken. And as I've already mentioned, our courts are public courts. It will depend on the investigation report, which will identify those members of the PDF that are due for discipline. Thank you.
Let's give him a hand clap. I think that gives us some confidence that some action is being taken at that level. At the Uganda Law Society level, again, we have given you a toll-free line. We've told you it's going to be a pro bono week. We're going to be available to you. We are also participating in the 16 days of activism, especially against, of course, violence against women. And just to respond to Martha's question on Uganda Law Society has previously engaged actually with the Ministry of Gender. And the issue of shelters is a big one. We've even been talking to FIDA, we've been working with LASPNet, and we do not even have enough facilitation for just the what are they called? The social workers, probation officers. Even the probation officers are very few. They're understaffed, they're overworked. We do not have shelters, that's a fact. The few shelters that are around are actually NGO run. So I think that we need to join hands with UN Women, and we want to thank UN Women because everything that we've been doing around SGBV in the Uganda Law Society, including our pro bono app, have been sponsored by UN Women. Please give them a big hand clap. They've also helped us a lot with interventions because, as you know, the judiciary is now doing SGBV cases in sessions, and we've been able to do a lot to train our lawyers, to train magistrates, even on juvenile justice. However, the issue of violence against women keeps escalating, women and children and girls, and I think up to now, we've not seen any real action from the state that is preventive. I think we always act after the fact. It's difficult. Children are home now, they're not in school. And we found out around just the 3 months from March to about June, we had about 3,000 girls being defiled. Okay, 3,000 girls impregnated. So you can tell the number of people of children that were probably defiled during that time.
And you find that the people are the chief caregivers, the people that are abusing them. So it's quite difficult, and I do not know whether I would even have enough homes for these people. I think we're going to have to engage in not only dealing with the perpetrators or providing homes for those that need shelter, but also in lifestyle mindset change. And that is why we need a lot of advocacy. The fourth estate, you have a duty, not just to report on these cases, but to educate our people. I know that bad news sells, but once in a while, let's educate our people. Let's translate these things. Civic education, Dr. Goddard spoke about the importance of civic education during this point time. The Uganda Law Society has committed itself. Yesterday we had our Northern Region representative, Conrad, on radio talking about educating people on their rights to vote, but also talking about the 16 days of activism and the Pro Bono Week. So we'll continue doing this, and I want to applaud members of the Uganda Law Society who have actually volunteered to do this. The disconnect between the security forces and citizens, I think this is a call now to the security forces that we need a human face. We need to engage. But I also think that this is a responsibility for the Electoral Commission during this time. We also invited them. I don't know why they're not here. But we need to see leadership in this period from the Electoral Commission, because they need to get the players at the table. It's not only security forces, it's the political parties and their leaderships that need to sit down and decide that are they going to build their houses and their political careers on the blood of Ugandans, or are they actually going to do this for Ugandans? And we need to see the Electoral Commission do that. We want to call out to the police forces, to the UPDF, to all the state actors also to prioritize these things. The Uganda Law Society is open to dialogue. Let's not only engage when things go wrong. I want to thank all our stakeholders, everybody that is online, everybody that has come. Thank you so much for participating, and we welcome your comments. We welcome your comments. If you send your comments to admin@uls.or.ug. If you have any reports on any infractions, please share them, and we promise that we will bring them to the light. On the issues of 19th and 18th, we keep commenting on them. However, I've told you that we are going to proceed with public interest litigation in this matter, and would also like members to continue giving us information because we are compiling that report. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Before you leave, I'm going to give you one other task of launching the quarterly report.
Can I please invite our guests to come and stand with us? This is like a cult. We do this all the time. Somebody help us remove this podium, this beautiful podium. Please come with your reports. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make this snappy. Can I have a report?
I don't want to cover her.
Hey, don't. Huh? Oh, okay. Sorry? Okay. I hereby declare I hereby declare this report of the rule of law, state of the rule of law, the state of the rule of law for the third quarter of 2020. I declare it launched today, and I present it to the public and to our stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Thank you so much, our invited guests. I know you've taken off a great part of your morning to be here. We really appreciate you for coming. Our online audience, thank you so much for joining us online. You've been really active. I know you're quite a number. I can't begin to mention you all, but thank you so much. Thank you, and have a good day.